Today is obviously a continuation from yesterday, and this is a special called meeting this Wednesday, June 21st, 2023. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this meeting to order, and let's go ahead and have a roll call.
Squire Clem.
Here.
Squire Hicks.
Here.
Squire Muse.
Here.
Squire Pennington.
Here.
Squire Saltzman.
Here.
Squire Thompson.
Here.
Squire Whitehead.
Here.
Squire Yates.
Here.
Judge Executive Keith Tall.
Here. Right. We'll have an invocation by Magistrate Kenny Saltzman and Pledge of Allegiance by Magistrate Kenny Muse.
Bow your heads, please. Father God, we thank you for this day you've given us. We thank you for the rainfall. Father, we pray that you would guide us and direct us today in doing the county's business. Father, we pray that you would open our ears and our minds and our hearts, Lord, to hear what you have to say to us through this testimony today. Father, we thank you for all that you do for us. We thank you for your son, Jesus. And I pray that you would bless our time here together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so similar to yesterday, I just have a few opening comments as far as the agenda goes. We have the actual proceedings that we'll watch, the final, I think, about 2.5 hours worth today. After that, we'll go into a closed session, and then we'll adjourn after the closed session. So this is a special called meeting and continuation of yesterday's meeting to consider an application for an amendment to the current zoning map of Hardin County. Because it is a special called meeting, only the single matter on the agenda may be considered today. We will resume watching the Planning Commission hearing, and we will take breaks as necessary. At the end of watching the recorded hearing, we expect to go into closed session to briefly discuss proposed or potential litigation related to this matter. We do not intend to make a decision today. I expect the decision would be made at a regular fiscal court meeting, and that would be posted on our regular agenda in advance. Okay, we're ready to start.
5 minutes of those wishing to speak in favor of. So now the floor will be opened up to those wishing to speak in opposition to. The same courtesies will be given to you. You will have 55 or an hour. If you choose to reserve some, you may do so. So with that, give me your name, Mr. Broderick.
Yes, sir.
For the record.
921 College, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Mr. Chairman, we would like to reserve 5 minutes at the end for closing. We do have people that want to address the planning and zoning members tonight. I will tell you this, we have folks in here, we have folks in the other room. You can't see the folks in the other room, so I'm simply going to ask those in the other room if they will shout out where they are, please. I don't think they can hear me.
I think it's a delay.
That's fine. Oh! Yes, there's a microphone delay. Thank you, and I'm sorry for the delay. All of you here that are opposed to this zone change, please stand. Thank you very much. With that idea in mind, we have a first person who would like to comment to you. Dave.
Now, the way that this will work, once you present, if you are finished with your presentation as you are an individual presenting as opposed to the company, you will be subjected to questions directly after. Is that okay? That's fine. Okay. And Council, yes.
I asked this earlier. We didn't get that. That's why we make our presentation.
If you would like to make your total
Kentucky University, and UK. All of them come as guest speakers to help educate our community. So I'm glad you came and you learned some. I'm here tonight to request the rejection of the zone change from R2 to I2 because it does not comply with the Hardin County Comprehensive Plan. The intent of Section 313, heavy industrial zone, the development shall be sited and designed so as to avoid neighborhoods, residential development in light of potential nuisances and hazards. The use of the zone should be set forth in the land use table. Electric generation is not listed in that table. Stonefield states that in their PSC application that there will be Tier 1 and Tier 2, have 3 tiers, reflection up to 50 minutes a day for 4 months a year. This is just one example of a nuisance which will affect 46 residential properties and everyone driving on Route 62. It's in their documents. Under KSR 100 and Kentucky law, the county's comprehensive plan sets a stage for all land uses and related planning and zoning ordinances in the county. Therefore, it is the very foundation for how our community grows and functions today and in the future. This 40-year land conversion will affect my life, my children's life, and my grandchildren. The comprehensive plan, land use element 314, set the recommended land use and patterns and development. And it states agricultural land shall be preserved and agricultural operations protected and encouraged by the use of various land use techniques, including but not limited to residential clustering, conservation easements, and the right to farm regulations. There is currently no use element for solar greater than 1 acre in zones A1, I1, or I2 after the Hardin County Circuit Court invalidated the zoning resolution 2020-011. Rebranding the use to industrial just does not change the reality of the project. The comprehensive plan is here to protect our natural resources, prime farmland, and clean drinking water. And it's very clear that this rezone request from R2 to I2 is not appropriate in this area. The following sections support those findings. The proposed rezone is in the natural resources area and is currently being farmed under a lease. The comprehensive plan describes the natural resource area as agricultural use is the prominent use in this area. In addition, natural resource area planning was developed to protect sources of our drinking water. One of the reasons the ball can stop operations is because the water table is so high in this area. Goal number 4 encourages developments to be sensitive to the environmental constraints and the natural conditions of the site. Goal 5, land use. It's to encourage that all land uses are developed in a manner compatible with the surrounding land use. Goal number 12, preserves the natural surroundings for people of Hardin County. And goal 14, stewardship of land. To ensure that Hardin County's non-renewable resources are developed in a manner which will best serve the county. Object 1 needs to be quoted. It says, discourage the conversion of prime agricultural land to other uses and to protect all agricultural land from conflicting development activities. We should not be trading our agricultural industry for Stonefield LLC merchant generating facility, whose main partners are Tennessee Valley Authority, Duke Energy of North Carolina, MISO, which in partner sends electricity from Texas to Canada, and LG&E. As of 2022, Kentucky has 157 megawatts of solar operating in the state. With this facility, that will double the output and consume consume as much land as Blue Oval, which provides 5,000 jobs to good Kentucky residents. This project is not for Kentucky. In fact, our local electric supplier, NoLin, is not in favor of renewables without reliable storage capabilities, as stated in their January 2022 magazine article. In 3 letters between August and December 2022, the Public Service Commission has rejected Stonefield's application for failure to comply with KRS 278.704 as an emergent generating facility. The reason is clear, and I'll quote. It says basically, Hardin County Circuit Court invalidated Section 15-8. Therefore, there are no local setbacks applicable to this project, and the setbacks found in KRS 278.704 must be applied. The proposed structure and facility to be actually used for solar or wind generation shall be required to be at least 1,000 feet from the property borders of any adjoining property owner and 2,000 feet from any residential neighborhood, school, hospital, or nursing home. Tonight, Stonefield would like us to believe they are something different than an emergent generating facility. I would say that if it waddles like a duck and quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. This rezone request should receive a unanimous denial by this commission because it does not comply with our comprehensive plan. It does not comply with state law KRS 278.704 and the will of many people in Hardin County.
Your name, please, sir? My name is David Miller. My address is 1608 Franklin Crossroads Road, Cecilia, Kentucky. I would much rather be farming today, planting corn or soybeans than be here. But it is what it is. I am a grain farmer, and I live between Cecilia and Stevensburg. I am very familiar with the Buchanan and Dr. Knight's farm. My family farm is adjacent to the northwestern boundary of the Buchanan farm. In college at UK, I majored in geology, and while studying in graduate school, I wrote a paper on water pollution in West Hickman Creek. The pollution about the overflow of the sewage treatment plant caused that pollution. After teaching physical geography in college, I returned to Hardin County where I've been farming for 42 years. Let's talk about something serious here that will determine that this area is not suited for industry, and that is the geology. There are 4 issues with the geology of this parcel, which makes it a geologic hazard, unsuitable for industrial zone, and specifically a large-scale solar array. A geologic hazard is an area where structural damage and safety of people is a concern. According to Dr. Jim Currents, who has written numerous books, he is the authority on karst, he is authority on sinkholes. In fact, his nickname is Dr. Karst. Karst simply is an area where there is a landscape which you have open and covered sinkholes, sinking streams, caves, streams, caused by dissolving limestone underground. This parcel had all of that. Cover collapse sinkholes are sinkholes that have a cover over them, shallow cover, and they can fall in anytime. Cover collapse sinkholes and other sinkholes can occur overnight in new areas. Cover collapse sinkholes cause $20 million of damage in Kentucky each year, damaging structures, equipment, injuring people, and even killing racehorses. I have personally had 2 cover collapse sinkholes fall in when I was farming on the Buchanan farm. The first collapse cracked the frame on the front of my tractor when it fell in. The second one was more severe. While combining soybeans, all of a sudden the whole combine shifted violently to the left. I jumped out thinking my big wheel had fallen off and looked and was amazed to see my tire and wheel hanging there with the big hole underneath them. But this is a geologic, I'm sorry. This was a geologic hazard that even could have hurt someone. Me. I am not a geologist, but I know a sinkhole when I know a sinkhole. Dr. Currens has written all these studies, and I have conferred with him several times. I talked with him 3 times last week about this parcel. He's very familiar with it. He has studied karst for 40 years, and he has studied 300 karst areas in Kentucky. He has recently retired. He was wanting to attend tonight, but he's having some health issues. Karst is common in Kentucky, but each area has its own unique characteristics. Not only are the open and covered collapsed sinkholes a problem, but the volume of the underground water. The volume of the underground water forced Vulcan Quarry, part of the Buchanan farm adjacent to this parcel, to change its intended location to the south side of 62. The underground water became such an unsolvable problem for the quarry that it was forced to close. The underground rock layers can be mapped by sophisticated equipment today, but this does not change the fact that this is unstable and unpredictable area. Dr. Curran states, with all our new and advanced tests, all the TRTs and so forth, that you can map underground layers, we still do not know where, when, how large, or when a covered collapsed sinkhole will occur. The Corvette factory in Bowling Green had core tests done before the construction. According to Dr. Currens, one core sample missed detected that sinkhole by 9 inches. Sinkholes also create another problem. Surface water runoff flows straight down into sinkholes and go directly into a water table. With this water flows all the debris, pollutants, chemicals, hazardous elements, even topsoil. With the construction of a large solar array or any other industry, a large corridor is opened directly to our water supply. The water company intake is only a few miles away. Roots Creek also dissects this parcel of land, and it flows into the No Limit River to the White Mills intake. The Hardin County Comprehensive Plan states utmost care should be taken to protect our water resource area. This is a water resource area. When farming, the crops help to filter the water going into sinkholes. The amount of runoff is also lessened because much water soaks into the plants, the soil, and the roots. Again, our comprehensive plan states in the environmental consideration section, measures should be required to reduce surface water, groundwater, and air pollution. Our farming does just that. The last hazard I want to speak about is a geologic hazard caused by man. Geologists agree that continued blasting of rock layers, but rock quarries near or adjacent to an area will cause the underground rock layers, which is called strata, unstable for many years and may actually cause a risk of many earthquakes. This is the case here. For many years, the quarry has been blasting water right next door. The hazards and risks mentioned above, I just mentioned here, make this parcel unsuited for structures. The danger and enormous risk of hazardous elements causing an environmental catastrophe in our wells, our underground water, and our county water supply, and the flooding too. This is just too great. There are many other negative issues also. I'm sure, I got pictures, but I'm sure everybody knows what a sinkhole looks
No, no questions. They're still presenting there. Okay, Mr. Broderick, who do you have next? Okay.
Glenn Harrington. I live at 2528 Hardinsburg Road, Cecilia. Most of you board members know me. I'm a hometown boy, grew up here. I'm actually a fourth generation farmer, but I spent 17 years on the Soil Conservation Board, Hardin County Soil Conservation Board. And in that 17 years, we've done our dead level best to protect our natural resources, which is our drinking water. And I know the Buchanan Farm, and I know what I used to call the Charles Stark Farm, but that's now owned by Dr. Knight that we're dealing with now. But I went by there today, and I just studied the farm, and I just pulled off the edge of the road, and I just studied the lay of the land a little bit, because I'm a farmer. Charles knows that. You know, we just know ground. We know the lay of the ground. And I got to reflecting on 1997. Those of you that remember the spring of 97, we had a tremendous amount of rain in March and April. And I reflected back and I remembered whenever the water got over Highway 62, right there pretty close to where Andy Davis's driveway is, where the old Gardner house used to sit, there's a circle drive there. And I reflected back and I remembered in 97, the flooding issue that we had whenever water got over 62. Then I reflected back on all the wet years of 2003, 2004, 2005, whenever we had those very same wet years. But in 2011, we had one of the wettest seasons in Hardin County history when everything flooded. We had, at one time, we had 5 inches of rain one day. 2 or 3 days later, we had another additional 5 or 6 inches. And water was over the road on 222. Water was over the road at 62. I reflected back and I remembered whenever Vulcan Materials got into a lawsuit with a farmer that's farming that land now. And that lawsuit was over watershed. The water was coming off of Vulcan, and I looked up there today, I took a picture of it. When you're at that circle drive right there at the old Gardner house and you look up toward Vulcan's scale house, you can see where the erosion ditch is at. They've left the waterway there. But the erosion off of the rock quarry actually damaged that farmer's crops. But not only that, it got over the highway. But then you stop and think, where does all this water go? You know, you have all this water runoff. And right now the soil soaks up a tremendous amount of water whenever it rains. But whenever you put hundreds of thousands of solar panels on land, that particular spot, like this counter right here, this podium, that's not soaking up water. That water runs off just like it does your house roof or a building roof, and you divert water. Whenever that water runs off at a tremendous rate of speed, you have soil erosion. Now, us farmers know what soil erosion is because we fight this yearly and daily on our farms. But you can have a grassy area, you can have fescue that's really thick, but whenever you have a tremendous amount of water runoff, constant, that will actually erode that grass. But that water, folks, has to go somewhere. And whenever you go past Paul Equipment and you're on both sides of the road into this solar proposal, and the first thing you come to is you come to that creek. And all of that water runoff that comes off of Dr. Knight, it comes off of the front part, the Cecilia section of the Buchanan Farm, that goes into that creek. Now that creek eventually goes to someone's water supply because county water does not serve all of Hardin County on that end of the county. Those folks do not have county water. It's not accessible. So they rely on well water. I've had well water, grew up with well water. Had another farm that me and my wife just bought in Ronnieville. It had well water. Our well at home on 86 has been contaminated numerous times with water runoff. The water gets cloudy. I had a next door neighbor that spread liquid manure one day on his crop field on frozen ground. Came a tremendous rain a couple of days later. Guess what? We had green manure well water. My wife was born and raised in Ronnieville. She grew up on a well. Anytime it rained, their well was contaminated. But at the time, county water did not come out there. So they had to boil their water, because this was before we used to buy water. Well, what I'm getting at is this area is a natural watershed. Hardin County Soil Conservation dealt with that, and they still deal with that. Now, one thing that has not been brought to light here, because I feel like I'm jumping the gun just a little bit, because right now we're voting on the zoning change, we're not voting on solar. But it kind of goes hand in hand. No one has talked about the post that's going to be driven in the ground to hold these solar panels up. Now, I know the county road department and the state road department, they have to be extremely careful what posts they drive close to streams, because those posts are galvanized. They contain zinc, which is lead. Over a period of time, that zinc and that post will deteriorate a little bit. It'll tend to rust, it'll tend to corrode and canker, and that zinc will leach out of that, and that will actually get into a stream. State Highway Department knows that. County Road Department knows that. That's why they drive wood posts close to streams. Okay, this Buchanan farm and the Dr. Knight property, you're going to be driving thousands of steel posts, I reckon, in the ground. We have not asked his company that yet, because we haven't gotten that far. But we need to take that into consideration. And another thing we need to take into consideration is we have not heard what MSDS sheets that these solar panels have. They say they don't have toxic chemicals. I'm sure they don't actually contain a toxic chemical in them, but the soldering and even plastics. Plastics break down, as you all know. Over years, sunlight breaks plastics down. And those plastics and that solder and the components that are in that solar panel, that's what can leach out and get into our water system. And I'd like to say one thing about agriculture. We lose thousands of acres each day of prime farmland for development. Hardin County right now is getting ready to see massive changes. Right now, we're proposed at looking at around 7,000 acres going into solar, not counting the Glendale deal. When you take Glendale deal into the equation, taking out prime farmland, then you take 7,000 acres of farmland going into solar, what do we have left? What do we have left? There's an old saying, no farms, no food. Folks, your food does not come from Kroger or Walmart. Your food comes from area farmers, local farmers, such as myself and the other farmers in Hardin County and all throughout the United States that try to produce the safest, best food that we can consume and eat. If our farmland's gone, guess what? Our food comes from overseas where there's no FDA regulations. Do we really want to destroy our environment just to save the planet? I think that's a good question we should all ask ourselves. Thank you. I know that's a question.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to state it here.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to state what that is in just a second. I wanted to read through it before I started speaking, so I didn't have to do it in the middle of.
Before Mr. Payne puts it in the record, I'd like to at least know what it is. So there's going to be exhibit MN, and it says urban appraisals, stone built solar property.
shorter than Glenn. Hey, my name is Trina Martin. I live on 34 South Black Branch Road in Cecilia. I've had an associate appraisal license, and I'm now a licensed broker here in the state of Kentucky. I've been representing buyers and sellers in this market for 17 years. You guys have not been privy, I don't believe yet, of Kirkland's report, but it was submitted to the PSC in regards to Stonefield Solar's application, and that's what I just handed Adam. And I've read this appraisal report pertaining to this project. This report completely misses the mark in regards to this project, and I'm sure at some point they would have given it to you guys. But I would like to mention several of his comments and my observations within this report. He mentioned solar farms are compatible for rural residential and would function in a harmonious manner. There is no mention of industrial zoning. It's how it's in harmony with rural residential. There is no mention of a manufacturing facility use. He states solar farms which generate very little traffic and do not generate noise or dust do not negatively impact the value of adjoining properties. There is no data included for negative impacts on industrial zoning. Another statement, I have looked at homes in close proximity to large industrial uses. Such sales are not usable as they have multiple factors impacting the value. But aren't such sales great importance for this zone change here this evening? He states, I have eliminated from this analysis home sales under $100,000 as it is difficult to identify impacts through matched paired analysis. Well, that's really not much of an explanation in my opinion. Is it possible that those sales under $100,000 occurred because of dramatic loss in value? He mentioned solar farm too many times to count, but nowhere does it mention solar manufacturing or industrial zone in harmony with residential or agricultural uses. He states that most solar farms I have looked at are only a few years old and have not been in place long enough for sales to occur for me to analyze. Then why should this information be relied on at all when it comes to property values? My experience tells me, I've represented numerous buyers and sellers, that industrial manufacturing absolutely will impact property values. We have some of our market here tonight. If you believe that industrial manufacturing or sexually oriented businesses that is allowed in I-2, which is what they're requesting here tonight, will impact property value, stand up. Those in the other room, holler, yeah. I think there's a delay in here. We'll hear him in a second. 313, pertaining to heavy industrial I-2 of the zoning ordinance states, avoid neighborhoods and residential development in light of potential nuisances and other hazards. How would changing the zone to industrial do that? They have not and cannot demonstrate the appropriateness of this change, nor that the current zone is inappropriate. They have not demonstrated the major economic, physical, or social change to support this. However, our comprehensive plan, on the other hand, does support turning down this proposal. Goals and objectives that support it. Goal 1. How does this improve Hardin County as a place of residence? Goal 4, you've already heard on from David Miller and Dan Fieser. Goal 5, objectives 1, 2, 4, 5, and 9. How does this project ensure the best possible utilization of land within that county? How is this compatible with surrounding land use or facilitate a good transition between land uses when 86% of this land is our best soils and the largest surrounding land use is agricultural and residential housing? How does this preserve Hardin County aesthetics? Goal 8, objective 2. How is an industrial zone preserving neighborhoods and housing adjoining this. Goal 12, Objective 1 and 3. How is this protecting meaningful local tradition or preserving natural beauty? Goal 13, Objective 2. How does this support long-range planning processes with all of the growth that we are already experiencing and do not yet know the repercussions or the needs that it's going to create within our community? And most important, Goal 14, Stewardship of the land. Objectives 1 through 3. Wouldn't this convert prime farmland and land of statewide importance to undesirable uses? Does this not create conflict between development or industrial and agricultural zoning? Those two uses do not reflect the same things. How does an industrial zone support the benefits to adjoining county residents? How does this complement the natural setting or avoid activities which would alter natural settings? We heard tonight that it was going to be returned back to its original use. So does that mean they're going to return it to R2? I don't think so. Thank you guys for your time this evening. Now we will hear from David Tall.
State your name for the record, please, sir.
My name is David Tall. Live at 6325 North Long Oak Road, Cecilia.
Thank you.
It's good to see you, Chairman, Commissioners, Attorney. You guys holding up okay? Staff, Adam. I was born and raised here in Hardin County, and I'm the owner and general manager of Tall Equipment. After receiving an agricultural economics degree from the University of Kentucky, I started working with my dad full-time, and I've been there at Tall Equipment for 39 years, which makes me actually older than dirt. I should say topsoil, but I'm still younger than David Miller. Tall Equipment is located on Litchfield Road, just a mile east of the proposed project. We're 56 years old and a third-generation farm equipment dealership. So in the past 5 decades, Tall Equipment has seen a lot of things come and go. Here in the ag industry, I've never seen anything come onto the scene as fast and with as much negative potential as what we're dealing with right now with industrial solar. This has been flooding into our county for the past 2 years, and a lot of us have been researching this for the last 2 years. Obviously, one of the main questions on the table is if we just look at the economic impact. We've heard that question posed 2 or 3 times tonight already. Should the county make a trade of 950 acres of, it's actually 1,030 or around there, but it's 950 acres of prime farmland. Should we trade that and put that into a 120 megawatt utility scale solar installation? Stonefield Solar is proposing to convert these Hardin County acres into industrial solar facility, and they're publicizing an $8 million impact during the construction phase. So let's talk reality here. To put it bluntly, the construction phase is not only temporary, but it's labor that predominantly, if not entirely, is brought in from outside the county and outside the state. I would challenge you to go to any construction site and ask any person if they were hired locally or if they were brought in with the construction company. I don't know how in the world you would bring a construction company in and find temporary employees to work right now. They're not there. So it seems like an impossible thing to happen. Stonefield Solar is proposing to convert these Hardin County acres, not only touting the $8 million impact during construction, but they're also saying that once the construction phase is complete, that they will employ 1.8 full-time employees. Okay, that's not 180, it's not 18, that's 1.8 employees. This is from their presentation, their study. So here's the proposed trade-off. 950 acres of prime farmland will be taken out of row crop production. So one of the best and most accurate ways to quantify this economic impact comparison is by looking at the input method, or to simply calculate the crop production cost, or the cost of putting out a crop of corn and soybeans. Now, according to the UK Agricultural Department's corn and soybeans budget of 2023, the average cost of putting out a crop will be approximately $554 per acre average. This is on a 50-50, this is based on a 50-50 soybean corn rotation. So let's do some quick math. 950 or $554 per acre equals $526,000, $300 per year being spent, mostly with local agribusinesses. This cost of production is spent on seed, fertilizer, herbicides, lime, equipment, and fuel, all purchased from mostly local small businesses. In a paper published by Alison Davis, PhD, UK Department of Agriculture, called The Influence of Agriculture to Clark County's Economy, the professor states that for every dollar loss of production agriculture, the ripple effect throughout the rest of the economy would equate to an additional 20%. So using her numbers, you simply take the average cost of production, $526,000 per year, add the additional 20% to that, and we get $631,000. Y'all hanging with me? $631,000 that would no longer be spent in our county. $631,000 no longer spent in our county. So Stonefield Solar is using a 40-year time frame or lifespan of their project. So they take all their numbers times 40, so that's what I'm going to do. I did notice in the same publication that they state that the expected solar panel lifespan is 20 to 30 years. So I am a little confused about the discrepancy between a 20 to 30 year lifespan of a panel and the 40-year lifespan of the project that they're using. But if you take the 40-year time frame times the $631,000, we get $25.2 million. So $25.2 million, and you compare this with Stonefield Solar's number that they're giving, which is $18.1 million. I'll do the math for you. That's a $7 million loss in revenue. That's a negative $7 million economic impact. So with this in mind, I have a few questions to pose. 4 questions. Is it wise for Hardin County to rezone property to heavy industrial to accommodate an industrial solar project that will not only change the culture and scenery of our county, but could also have a negative $7 million economic impact? Number 2, is it wise for Hardin County to bet the farm on a technology that is only 18% efficient at best? Very unreliable and extremely land intensive, while new and more efficient and even cleaner energy producing technologies will most certainly emerge within the next few years. Would anyone bet the farm that we don't have better technology to produce cleaner electricity much more efficiently in the next 10 years? Who would bet their farm on that? Many say this technology is already here. I would submit to you to do your research, and I think you'll find that this technology is already here. So is it wise? Number 3, is it wise for Hardin County to gamble on this emerging industry that is subsidized heavily with a 30% government tax credit? Everyone should realize that a new administration could quickly strike that with an ink pen. enormous subsidy, which obviously would annihilate this house of cards. Number 4, is it wise for Hardin County to risk 1,000 acres for some of the most strategic land in the county for an industry such as the solar industry? Now, I'm not speaking specifically about Candela, but honestly, it's ironic that an industry that is totally reliant on sunshine to have such a shady reputation. I'm referring to an industry that is plagued with bankruptcies, it's plagued with mergers, acquisitions, and an enormous amount of incoming foreign investments. I'll give you a quick and recent example. I have a customer that farms next to the Mount Olive solar project in Russell County, Kentucky. According to WJRS News, the 440-acre project seems to now be in question. East Kentucky Power lists the project as suspended after demolishing woods, barns, and basically leaving the farm in a big mess. As I speak, the construction workers are loading up the equipment, moving out, leaving torn down barns and trees and piles of rubble with the project half done. Look, it's really as simple as this. As a Hardin County small business owner, I ask that you use common sense in making this decision. Use basic logic. In light of these 4 questions, use an abundance of caution as you vote to hopefully deny this zone change. Thank you.
Okay, just to let everybody know, there's 18 minutes left, correct? 18 total, so you've got about 13 minutes left. And right, that's with your 5. You've got 13 minutes left. So, yes, sir. Your name, please?
My name is Bobby Alexander. I live at 491 Boulder Drive, Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Art Commission, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak with you briefly tonight. I will be brief. I'm being a bit redundant because there's been some great speakers up here speaking on the same subject that I had in mind. So I'm going to talk just briefly about common sense. We've heard facts from statistics and letters and charts and so forth, but we haven't heard much about common sense. Here it comes down simply to this in America and perhaps the entire world going forward. We are producing more people than we're producing food. We're rapidly getting to that point. We have an influx of people, new people into this country of approximately 6 to 7 million, and that's going to continue to grow. And we keep giving away or covering up or using for other purposes that special land that we use to feed our country and perhaps a large part of the world. When do we get to where the balance is broken, where we don't have enough land to make enough food to feed everyone? What do we do then? We have a huge task here before us to make sure that we don't allow that to happen within the limitations that we have. Hardin County is growing in leaps and bounds. I've only been here since '94, and I am just stupefied at how fast this county's grown and the industry that has moved here and will continue to move here. How much farmland do we let go to other purposes in order to make money when we still have to eat? That's all I really have to say about this issue is common sense. Do we want to starve our people downrange, our children, our grandchildren, in order to have a few dollars or a little bit of free sunshine today? I think not. I think we need to vote this thing down today, tomorrow, and each day going forward. Thank you so much.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My wife has a handout.
of some crops that are grown here in Kentucky and their impact.
So this is going to be Exhibit N, and it's, what do you call this, Mr. Douglas? Crops grown in Kentucky.
Yes. That'd be fine, thank you.
Dude, I think it merits the applicant, council, keep even more that.
I was going to wait till the end of his comments, but yes, we'll get a copy of the seat as well.
Mr. Hope, for the record, have you stated your name? I'm sorry, I was getting the...
Yes, and could I ask how much time is remaining?
Yes, how much time?
Right, 4 minutes, so take comment.
Roughly 10 to 11 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Lawrence Ho. I live at 1700 South Long Grove Road in Glendale, Kentucky. I'm the 7th speaker who came here tonight to oppose this, who is a Hardin County resident, as opposed to the people that spoke earlier in favor of this project or change. Only one is from Hardin County, and she lives a great deal farther away from the project than most of our members and any of our speakers tonight. So is it really a big deal if we replace 1,000 acres of good farmland with industry? It really is a big deal. Here's some facts that will help to establish that. Probably the main reason is food security. Remember that term because you're going to hear a lot of that over the next few years. As the previous speaker said, we need to reserve our farmland for food. Growing our food in America should take a top preference. Hardin County is blessed with some very rich, productive farmland. Our Crowder soil in Hardin County is rich in nutrients. It drains well. It makes up most of our prime soil. Much of the soil on the Buchanan and Knight Farm is Crowder B soil, very productive and it drains well. Our food, which is produced here in Hardin County and Kentucky, is the cleanest and safest in the world. We need to save this very valuable resource for our children's future. Our comprehensive plan states our goal is to discourage the conversion of prime agricultural land to other uses and to protect all agricultural land from development activities. How valuable is this land? I'm not talking about dollars. I'm talking about what does it produce? What about the food? What about the products that come off of this land right now? The farmers here in Hardin County produce corn, soybeans, wheat, feed for livestock, hay, straw, ethanol, biodiesel, and habitat for our wildlife. According to our local farmers, this is what it produces today, which is in reference to the handout there. For example, on 800 acres, and I know this project is a little larger than that, on 800 acres you can grow 200 bushels per acre of corn, and that would be over 5 million pounds of corn sweetener, or almost 500,000 gallons of ethanol. We already have green energy on this land. We don't need to convert it to some other kind of energy. We've got biodiesel. We've got ethanol. When you drove here tonight, if you used a gasoline car, chances are 10% of that was made from corn. Soybeans. Soybeans grow up to 70, 75 bushels per acre. Over 800 acres, you could have 80,000 gallons of biodiesel, or 76,000 gallons of soybean oil, with an additional 2.3 million pounds of soybean meal left over for livestock. That's what can be produced by this land. Wheat. It can grow more wheat than we would need to grow to make over 2.5 million loaves of bread. That's what we can do with this land. That's what can be done with this land. You can have over 2 million gallons of milk from a dairy farm. That's what is the real cost of replacing this land. Many people don't realize the impact corn and soybean production has on our energy that we use. Ethanol and biodiesel both are added to our gasoline and diesel fuels because they burn cleaner and they're cheaper to make than regular gasoline or diesel. 10% of all gasoline at the pumps, with few exceptions, is ethanol, made from corn, produced by our farmers.
And how does this farmland production help our environment? While crops are growing, they take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. We know that animals need oxygen, but we don't need so much carbon dioxide. Industry emits pollution into the air with carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, and so do our automobiles. Our crops help to clean and cool our air. An acre of corn captures 36,000 pounds of carbon from carbon dioxide during its growing season and puts it back into the soil. 1 acre, 36,000 pounds of carbon dioxide. That's the equivalent of the emissions for your car for 26,000 miles. Multiply that by 800 acres, and you see the impact that this gets. Some scientists have concluded that by increasing the yield on our crops, we can indeed be the answer to our global warming. Today's industries are paying farmers to grow more cover crops during the winter and to grow crops on the land year-round to offset their air pollution that the industrial plants are producing. Our crops, pastures, and green plants on our farms are the best green energy that we have. In regards to water quality, the Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet says that Roots Creek is one of the few clean waterways in Hardin County. Others are polluted or silted. When it rains on our crops, the plants slow down the velocity of the raindrops and hold the soil in place. The water filters down through the roots and soil together to clean the water before it goes into the water table. By cleaning the water and preventing erosion, our crops help to preserve the safety of our drinking water. On the other side, water is emitted from industry contain pollutants and heavy metals which wind up in our water. Many of our building products come from China and have harmful elements. Their safety measures are inferior to our country. Not only can those elements get into our water, or in case of fire, they can be put into the atmosphere. Like a previous speaker tonight, I have well water. I have to be concerned about the quality of the water in our county, and I am directly downstream from the Roots Creek plant. With regards to the manufacture of these panels, it was said tonight that they would not come from China, they would come from Vietnam and other Asian countries. You should know that there is a heavy tariff on those panels because they are circumventing the rules of getting their equipment from China. That was just in the news today or yesterday. Our country, state, and our county are losing valuable farmland at an alarming rate. Hardin County is building industry on some of the best land we have here. There are areas in our county which is not highly productive, which could be used for solar energy. The U.S. lost 2 million acres of farmland in 2022. According to the USDA, we will need to double our food production by 2050. How can that be achieved by us if we continue destroying our farms on good productive land? Finally, our wildlife is also being destroyed by destroying farmland. Wildlife is not only needs cropland for cover, but also for food. One of the reasons so many deer are killed on the highway is because of the dwindling habitat, looking for cover. Our streams are becoming brown with sediments from industry and pollution. There are ways of preventing this. It just takes a little more planning and expense. The Hardin County Comprehensive Plan to encourage the preservation of streams, trees, shrubbery, grass, and other natural features of a site. Our Planning and Development Commission has a difficult task. I want you to know that we pray for you a lot. I would not want your job, but this decision is an easy one. Please vote no and leave this land in farming for the many reasons that I mentioned tonight. Please vote no and do not destroy our food source.
Okay, we've got 1.5 minutes left to preserve your 5. Does somebody else want to say anything? Yes, you still have your 5 minutes. Anybody else want to say a minute and a half? But okay, he's had his opportunity to speak. Let's give somebody. Oh, a question. Okay, well, this is a question right now. Okay, well, let's her the opportunity to speak since you've had the opportunity to, if that's okay. All right. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Dolly Governor. I live at 5795 Wrightyville Road, Wrightyville, Kentucky.
Okay, you have a minute and a half.
When the solar company got up here and spoke, he asked how many in the room was for solar. I was in the other room. There were at least 73 chairs in there. No one stood up. No one. That was asked again just recently. About 25 to 26 empty chairs because people had gone home. Only 5 people sat down that were in support of solar. Everybody else stood up in that room against solar. You need to know that when you make this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's, unless somebody can do something in 50 seconds, we're about it. Okay, if you got 50 seconds.
I'm the 50-second guy.
All right, sir, give me your name. Paul, let me have your name. I gotta have your name for the record first. Give me your name. Hang on, we're gonna pause it just for a second. Okay, we're gonna use, the battery's probably dead on that one.
Paul Branningham, 148 Deerbrook Lane, Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
Okay, thank you, Paul, sorry.
I'm in opposition to this. You guys are in.
Oh, if only that was a fire alarm and we could go home, huh? All right, Mr. Brandon.
Is this working? Okay. As was just stated, you're not in an enviable position here tonight. The current site for the Glendale Industrial, that industrial zone was deliberated over for 20 years. The state legislature waited on it, the governor, the executive branch, locally, every entity in Hardin County has weighed in on that. And you all are sitting in a position to make a decision for something that is tantamount to the Glendale megasite. And you've got an additional 8 sites that are megasites that are waiting in line. So I just wanted to say, you have a heavy thing to you, tonight to look at in terms of this decision.
All time. Sorry.
Okay.
As a housekeeping matter, I realized that there was an exhibit submitted as part of the applicant's case, i.e. a letter to the Industrial Foundation. Mr. Robbins is counting opposition. You need to see that or copy that. I need a copy. 2018 documents. Yeah, it was the Industrial Foundation. Basically, there's that. Tissue exhibit, there was Ellis Power. There was, I want to say Ms. Martin, as part of her presentation, gave an exhibit.
Tree gave an exhibit, an appraiser's report, the hose gave an exhibit. Yeah, we got a list of all of them. I want to make sure that
I think the council's fairly needs to have an opportunity to review. I would also recommend that anybody that spoke as part of the presentation, if we were to adjourn now, take a break, cannot leave. They have to be subject to cross-examination as part of the due process. So if you spoke, you can't leave now that had the opportunity to be questioned by the applicant.
Okay. With that being said, we're going to take another 15-minute break.
Thanks, Chancellor.
Hey, Aaron.
To pick up where
Hey,
we
Aaron,
left off.
could you just pause it?
5 minutes left for those wishing to speak in favor of and 5 wishing.
Maybe a good time for us to take a 10-minute break, okay? So let's,
Judge, how come they always get 15, we only get 10?
because he's nicer than me. All right, so be back at, what, 4:47?
We just handed down 22 minutes left on the.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and start.
To speak in opposition to, but before we do that, questions will be made now from the, let's go get there, from the people that wish to have questions. So I will now open the floor up, and again, if you spoke, be prepared to answer a question if it is directed to you. Okay, so if you spoke, just be ready. Okay, are there any questions? Yes. Well, I hope those aren't all questions. Okay, give me your name and let's begin.
Aubrey Muse, 744 Brock Road, Rounding Up, Kentucky, 40162. Just for the record, I didn't give any personal qualifications because they're not as long as impressive as my colleagues, but I think it might be pertinent now to just provide that for the record.
I'm sorry.
Qualifications.
Okay, that would be fine.
Very short resume. As I mentioned, I do have a 4-year degree in environmental science and public policy. That's from Harvard University, where I also wrote an undergraduate thesis and graduated with honors. I say that just to say I have pretty rigorous schooling and quite a bit of research experience. This question, I believe, is just addressed to the group as a whole.
To who?
To
Yeah, I need a specific person. If not, we're going to have 15 people come up on dance.
Yeah, I think what we had talked about was asking sort of questions and then having any of the witnesses that were presenting to come up, whoever they felt was appropriate. If you'd like it directed to a specific person.
Mr. Broderick, is that okay with you? Or you want to direct it to a specific person? Right, absolutely. Okay, so if you spoke in this, Mr. Broderick, I'm going to lean on you to kind of direct that and make sure that gets done. All right.
I just don't do you
first person who spoke, I really apologize. I don't remember names.
Just state the question and we'll figure out who's. Trina Martin, I believe, is who you're speaking of, is no?
Dan Fieser.
Okay, all right. State your question, please.
So the question is, just have you reviewed all of the developer commitments that we submitted as part of our application to the county?
I'm sorry.
Have you reviewed the developer commitments that we submitted as part of our application to Hardin County?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Have you reviewed our developer commitments that we submitted as part of our application to Hardin County?
No.
Are you aware that we proactively...
Do we have two mics that are working? Okay, we do now, okay. Yes, hello. Okay, continue.
Are you aware that we proactively proposed those commitments to the county as commitments that the project would be bound by?
I'm really not understanding what you're asking.
She has the right, just some of yours did not pertain necessarily to their presentation, so we're going to allow questions. That's what we're here for, so we want both sides to have the equal time. Again, in fairness, some of y'all's did not necessarily pertain to what they were saying as well. Right. Okay, and that's point taken. So he has not reviewed those.
Thank you. We talked a lot in our presentation about preserving both agricultural use of the land that would be co-located with electricity generation. Actually, no, due to the last thing you just said, I'm not going to ask that question.
Okay. Now again, this has to be pertinent to what they presented, not to what you presented.
Understood. Do we have any subject matter experts who'd like to come up and ask a question, Mr. Fieser?
I'm not hearing.
I'm not hearing real well either, so maybe the mic either closer to you or... Yeah.
those things. Yeah.
We need to move this along.
Awesome.
Your name, please?
Good evening, Batsal Shah, BATSAL SHAH, 1201 Dublin Road, Columbus, Ohio, 43215.
I think, sir.
I'd like to give a little background on myself real quick. I'm a professional engineer licensed.
Move your mic closer to your mouth.
Sure. I'd like to give a little background on myself. I'm a professional engineer licensed in the state of Kentucky. I'm also a civil engineer by training with my undergraduate, master's, and PhD in geotechnical investigations and geological investigations. I have a question, or a few questions related to the presentation that was provided by David Miller.
Okay, state your question, please.
Sure. Mr. Miller, you indicated earlier that you spoke to Dr. Kearns with the Kentucky Geological Survey last week. Is that correct?
What was your question again?
You spoke to Dr. David Kearns last week?
Several times.
Okay, your phone number is 270-401-1998.
His telephone number?
Is that your telephone number?
Yeah, I got it here somewhere.
Okay.
You think I did talk to him?
You spoke to me last week. You texted me last week. We spent about a half an hour on the phone. It was after half an hour of a phone call. We had conversations regarding geotechnical and geologic surveys for solar farms related to sites in karst. Do you recall our conversation from last week?
I talked with Jim Kearns last year about solar and about karst topography in this area. I talked to him twice last week.
Okay.
So would you like to hear what he said?
I think you misspoke. I think you spoke to me last week. I have our text message conversation and our conversations from last week. Our conversation from last week was actually contrary to the conversation that you brought up today. A lot of the points that you made about karst and solar development and the inability to investigate karst. Yes, I'm getting to the question. Yes. The question that I had was, you mentioned that there's an inability to evaluate the presence of sinkholes where and when in karst areas. Is that correct?
Are you referring to this study?
I'm referring to your question.
This is your study in your presentation, right?
No, I'm not Dr. Kearns.
Engineering firm?
No, that's Dr. Kearns' paper you have in your hand. The question that I have...
about sinkholes.
About sinkholes, correct. You indicated that there is no study we can do to evaluate where and when karst can occur. Is that correct?
Not karst. When sudden collapse or cover collapse sinkholes occur.
Okay.
Karst is a lot of places in Kentucky.
That's very correct.
There's lots of different categories of karst.
Correct. And your background is geology, you mentioned earlier?
That's correct.
Okay. What tools would you use to evaluate and investigate karst?
When I was in UK in geology studies, we went out on field trips and we observed karst. In the inner bluegrass is one of the bigger areas of karst.
Okay.
It's one of the biggest areas in Kentucky.
Okay.
Some of the horse farms have the sinkholes, and some racehorses even follow him. Dr. Kern is an expert. In fact, his nickname is Dr. Karst. Do you have any other questions about Dr. Kearns?
No, they're not related to you. So you mentioned that you can do a visual site assessment to investigate and evaluate karst. Are you aware that that assessment was done over the course of 6 days as part of the development of the zone build engineering work?
I didn't hear your question.
Oh,
you were referring to a report or a study?
You mentioned that it is difficult to evaluate and investigate karst during your presentation. Are you aware that there was a geotechnical and geological survey, a site walkthrough, what you indicated, done over the course of 6 days at the project site for the project?
Okay, are you referring to GNO? It's an engineering firm in New Jersey that did work for you.
That is myself.
Yeah. I talked with either you or the other, maybe it's your relatives.
Mr. Miller, please hold your mic to your mouth. Thank you.
About karst. Last year.
Last week.
last year. I accidentally called you last week on my cell.
Right. And we spent about a half an hour discussing karst and what we would do as a geologic investigation for it. The standard of care, whether you're developing a solar farm or you're developing a school half a mile away from the project site, is a standard of care. It's first evaluating from a visual perspective. It's then going into doing detailed invasive surveys that includes electrical resistivity imaging, electrical resistivity mapping, multi-channel analysis of surface waves. Yes, a number of investigations were done as part of this work. Are you aware of all the studies that were completed to investigate the concern of karst on the site?
I am concerned with karst, and I'm familiar with the TRTs. Is that what you're referring to?
No.
He's asking about, there was a site survey done, I assume is what I'm hearing correct?
Yes, correct.
The last 6-7 days that was...
This site survey was completed over the course of 35 days.
He's just asking if you were aware of that site survey that took place during a 6 or 7 day period.
The site we're talking about?
Yes.
No.
Okay, thank you.
But it doesn't matter because karst changes all the time.
That's correct. Karst can change all the time. That's why we do engineering evaluations for those things. The reason I bring that up is there are a lot of items you brought up in your conversation. Some of them were actually related to conversations that we had. A lot of them were misleading conversations. So I also want to ask you the question here. Are you aware that there's an extensive karst avoidance, minimization, and mitigation plan for the project site, which specifically highlights the questions and concerns that you had?
I think you're referring to this model, correct?
No.
This is a model with how you can build on karst areas? Is that what you're referring to?
That paper you're pulling in front of you is a paper by Dr. Currens of the Kentucky Geological Survey.
Dr. Currens.
That's right.
And this is listed in your plan for this project. And I'm ready to discuss this with you right now.
That's not my
This is the time for the question.
Yeah. Witness answer the question.
Right.
What was the question? It was about whether I was aware that there was a site determination took place on this area a few days ago.
That is the question.
No, it's not the question.
State your question clearly.
Sure. The question that I have is, there is a karst minimization, avoidance, and mitigation plan specifically made for the project to evaluate the concern of karst for the site. That plan was prepared over the course of 35 days of field investigations, which include site walkthroughs, invasive investigations, non-invasive investigations as well. So my question is, you mentioned the concern related to karst, but the concern you brought up does not have any awareness to what was completed on the site. Is that correct?
Right.
I wasn't aware that you did any kind of study within the last 2 weeks on this area. And I'm sure you saw this sinkhole, didn't you?
Okay, we're drifting off course here. Yep. Let's keep it relevant.
Correct.
It is relevant.
Right.
Yeah, that's the question I had, was the awareness of whether that plan was there or not. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. No. Thank you. Yes, sir, your name, please?
Reed Sellers, 2525 Arapahoe Avenue, Boulder, Colorado. I have a question for Mr. Harrington.
Okay. Mr. Harrington, if you get your name for me, please.
Do what? I'm sorry.
Your name again, I'm sorry.
Glenn Harrington, 2528 Hardinsburg Road, Cecilia.
State your question, please.
Mr. Harrington, have you reviewed our development plans?
No, I have not reviewed your development plans. I listened to your presentation tonight.
In our presentation, did you hear about our stormwater management plans?
Yes, I heard your review about stormwater protection plans, but I think it's much hogwash. We've heard all of this before. These stormwater protection plans, you all say anything you want to. Okay, factories in...
You're right. All right, I agree.
Are you aware of our vegetation management plans and their proposed conditions that we will leave the project in post-construction?
I do not believe those, sir. I think you're lying to this.
Sir, no, it's a simple yes or no question.
No, I have not.
Are you aware that the current condition of the proposed site is row crops?
Yes, I am aware it's row crops.
Yes, and our proposed condition post-construction is meadow grass.
You can plant grass anytime you want to, but yes, yes, I'm aware it's grass. I'll answer your question. Yes, I'm aware it's grass.
As a part of our stormwater management report, we reviewed I'll get to the question. We reviewed, and what I'm wondering is if you're aware that the conversion from row crops to meadow grass actually reduces off-site runoff, and that we've proven that in our stormwater management plans, which are a matter of record.
I'm aware of that, but I do not believe your study.
Okay.
I think you're not.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's stamped by a third-party professional engineer.
Oh, you can make anything that you want to, sir.
Gentlemen, I'm not going to do this, okay? You can ask questions and just a simple answer would be sufficient.
Do you know how often fields in agricultural land are often left bare?
Very seldom in Hardin County are croplands left bare. They are left bare, the corn or soybeans, but that is typical. And the reason why is the chaff that the combine spread out, whether it's corn or soybeans, the chaff that is spread out by combine prevents soil erosion.
Okay,
now there are...
You've answered the question. His answer. Okay.
I think I'm good. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. Any other questions? This could be the shortest question and answer I've had on record ever. Okay, if no more questions are there, then we will move on. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Kristen Vipke.
Kristen, if you can pull the mic really close to you, please.
Kristen Vipke, 801 Lakeside Drive, E-Town.
Okay, thank you.
I'm one of the 5 landowners of the Buchanan farm, and my grandfather farmed it, and about 40 years ago when he died.
I need a question.
Okay, so we've been leasing it out for 40 years or so to Kevin Clark. Probably less than, around 500 is being farmed. Corn that's ethanol use and soybeans. So I just wondered, you know, it's not public land, like it's our land.
Okay, but I understand what you're saying. Don't think I'm being different. I just need a question.
Well, does David Hall expect us to farm it till the end of time? Possibly, you know.
Okay, that's a question.
That's our question.
Would you like to respond to that?
And I had
and you can follow up with that if you'd like. David, come up to the podium, please.
the only thing that we can do.
Hang on, Kristen. Let's get this on. Right.
Gotcha.
David, if you'll give me your name again, please, sir.
David Tall, 6325 North Longbarrel Road, City, Kentucky, 42724.
Kristen, I know this is confusing. Ask your question again for me, please.
No, it's the only thing that we are allowed to do with our farm is farm it till the end, till we all die. You know, there's 5 of us. There's 7 grandkids or 12 grandkids. You know, we feel like we should be able to do with the land what we want. Being responsible, we think solar is an amazing thing. You can still farm the land.
Please. Okay. The question is, just restate your question.
And you know, what do you expect us to do? It's about 500 acres being farmed. Kevin's been farming it for over 40 years. He's getting older.
Okay. The question is, what would you like them to do with their land if they? Do you expect?
I would prefer that you keep farming it.
Yes, but we don't. None of us farm it.
Again,
but what if we don't want it?
Right, we need questions.
Do you want me to tell you what you can do with your farm implement company? I mean.
If you would like for me to come up with a price for you and you'd like to buy it, we can talk later.
comments and questions, please. Don't let this drift off. Let's keep it here. So, any other questions?
The Vulcan issue, we did not renew with them because we did not want to.
Okay, this is a statement again. I'm sorry I have to have a form of a question. The time that y'all could present it's passed, so it has to be in the form of a question.
Yeah. What would you do if the runoff question? My dad compensated Kevin for that damage to his crops that year. The question is, we did not know if we wanted to expand the Vulcan quarry. We wanted to preserve the farmland, preserve the land. That is why we ended right now.
Okay.
So.
You don't know how hard this is to
What is the negative impact of if the farm does not go industrial?
Okay.
What if it stays residential farming? What is the negative impact to our farm?
Okay.
And to other farms?
Okay. Anybody wish to answer that question? David? Okay. Okay, Trina, give me your name and address for the record, please.
Trina Martin, 34 South Black Branch Road, Cecilia, Kentucky. There is no negative impact if it stays the way that it is.
Well, I think there is, probably.
Well, you asked the question, I answered it.
This is not a debate. It's a question. So,
okay.
Okay.
I didn't know that's answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Okay. Give me your name, sir.
Troy Augenstein, 1620 Griffith Avenue, Owensboro, Kentucky.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Question, please.
Would you rather the land go to Vulcan all the way up to 62 so that they can mine rock all the way up to 62?
Well, I don't know that they can do that. That would be something that planning and development, that's not being what's presented here.
Question.
Yeah. What would be the value of the land? You're an appraiser. What would be the value of our land with the rock being done up to 62 and with it sitting idle, not being farmed at all?
Well, I can't answer that question for you tonight because I would have to pull up comparables. There's not an appraiser or a real estate agent in the world that would give an indication of value without pulling comps and looking at it.
So you presented something from, that's not your company that did that?
No, that's your appraisal company.
I'm landowner.
Well, that's their appraiser.
We're the landowner. Okay, that's part of this.
Okay.
Y'all are mixing landowner and...
Well, it was the solar company that's representing you, it was their appraiser.
I believe what Kristen was really asking you was, did you do a negative impact study on the land, the corridor that is marked by the Industrial Foundation as a development corridor, the negative impact if it was not zoned industrial?
No, but I can. And I would be glad to. And I believe there was a question in there about it being the industrial court.
I asked you if you did it or said no. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Any other questions?
Good evening, Kenny Rambo, 553 Lombardi Drive, Cecilia, Kentucky.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rambo.
Question for Trina Martin, please.
Since I sat down, do I have to give my address and name again?
Just for the kicks and giggles, yeah.
Trina Martin, 34 South Black Branch Road, Cecilia.
Ms. Martin, can you share with us if you would be in attendance opposing if the property owners were presenting a site development plan including neighborhoods on this same property?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Would you be in attendance if tonight's hearing was for a site development plan to convert the Buchanan property into a neighborhood rather than into a solar facility?
No, because it's harmonious with the area, what's there now.
Ms. Martin, can you give us an idea of how much farmland you have sold over the last decade?
Oh, In acres, or are we talking dollar value?
Acres, certainly.
Well, I've been in the business for 17 years. So, I mean, if I had to guess, considering that we do auctions as well, I would say it'd be in the tens of thousands.
Is all of that farmland continuing to be farmed today?
The majority, yes. Most of it's mini farms, but yes.
By policy, can you give us an idea of what percentage of farms that you've been involved with this sale of that have had a deed restriction to keep those in farming?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Have there been any?
I'm sure there have been, but what farm specifically, I don't know. But deed restrictions can be removed at any time with a good lawyer.
Are you familiar, Ms. Martin, with Goal 6 of the comprehensive plan?
Let me pull it up. You have it.
Mr. Rambo, you just want to state it, it's obvious. Do you have it there?
No.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I would be familiar if I could read it. I've got it on my phone. He's going to read it.
To improve and promote Hardin County as a place for commerce and industry.
And can you go on with some of those objectives, Adam? I believe there's some details about...
is this a question? I need a question.
Yes, I just want to make certain that Ms. Martin is familiar with this and find out if she is.
Okay. I need a question.
I mean, I can say that I am because I've read the comprehensive plan several times. I just don't know it word for word by heart.
All right, let me help out. I apologize. The reason that I didn't pull that up was due to the fact that my phone's died. We've been here a little while. Okay. All right. So the question was, are you familiar with Goal 6, which states under Objection 1 to provide adequate space for the proper location of commercial and industrial land use? Are you familiar with that objective of the comprehensive plan?
Yeah.
Was it intentionally excluded from any of your comments and your group's comments this evening?
Well.
Thank you. Objective 5, to use all... Are you familiar with objective number 5? She answered.
No, I didn't get the answer. All I said was will.
Okay. Would you like to answer?
Yeah, I mean, I would. The reason that it was excluded is because there were so far many more that supported turning down this project, and there's only maybe a couple that actually support it. So, I mean, if we're weighing things out.
Okay. Are you familiar with Objective 5 of Goal 6, which reads to use all resources available to attract new commercial service and industrial development?
I believe I actually used Goal 5 in my presentation here, so give me just a moment. Yes,
No,
I am.
We are in Goal 6, Objective number 5. Are you familiar with Objective number 5 of Goal 6?
You were asking me about Goal 6.
No, Goal 6, Objective 5, to use all resources available to attract new commercial service and industrial development?
Yes, I am aware.
Okay. Are you aware of the significant economic changes that our community is facing as a result of the Blue Oval SK operation?
I am.
Would you agree that that will create additional demands for the generation of electricity in our community?
No.
You do not intend to sell houses to people that intend to flip a light switch and have power?
Well, yes, of course I do. But I'm sorry, is there a power outage?
Should the, well, we've not added the residents that will be the workforce needs of Blue Oval SK yet. Is that correct?
I think that's speculative. I don't know that that's really pertinent to what's going on here. We can't determine what power is going to be used.
Okay.
Wish I did.
Ms. Martin, do you think that this commission should prioritize businesses like yours that sell real estate and those that service the agricultural community over all of the other sectors within our small business community?
I think that this commission should follow what our comprehensive
Sorry, yes or no? Do you think that those businesses should be prioritized over others?
I think that the commission's job is to follow what the comprehensive plan says.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Yes, sir. Your name and address, please, sir.
Matt Kilmeyer, 414 East Crawford Avenue, Altoona, Pennsylvania, 16602. I'm with Candela Renewables. I have a couple questions for Altoona, Pennsylvania. I'm with the solar company, Candela. I have a couple questions for Mr. Broderick, if he'll allow.
Yes.
Did he present?
He did not.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay, anybody else? Just questions. Okay. All right. Hearing no more questions, each side has reserved 5 minutes. We will have, when should I do the questions with them? Okay, all right. There's just a procedural thing that we're working out up here. So, okay, each side has 5 minutes left. First, for those wishing to speak in favor or opposition to, and then those wishing to speak in favor of. So we reverse the process. Okay.
Well, it would be closing statements from the opposition and back.
That's what I understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Not like statements from the public.
Mr. Broderick, please.
Ready to do this.
Yes,
Yeah,
ready.
David Broderick, 921 College Street, Bowling Green, Kentucky. On behalf of those that are here in opposition, I'd like to thank you, members of the commission, you, Mr. Chairman, the staff, Adam, for patience. I think at this point in time, I'm not going to go over everything that's been said, hours and hours. I think many of the things have been said. The nice thing about a public hearing is sometimes people talk about things that are not relevant to the issue. The issue tonight is, did this application comply with the comprehensive plan? And our position is it did not. Very basically, the comprehensive plan has nothing in it for solar power. There was once upon a time a provision where solar panels could be applied for in another version of planning and zoning. That's no longer on the books. Your legislative body, Fiscal Court, has chosen not to put anything on the books about solar panels at this time. And they've had some period of time if they had chosen to take that action. You know, in the comprehensive plan, there is not one word about solar panel or solar energy producing matters, nor is there a definition of manufacturing, which would now by a version they've tried to exaggerate includes manufacturing. What they would like to do, and this is what the applicants have done tonight, they'd like to take an R2 zone that is primarily low density residential and change it to a heavy industrial zone, 1,030 acres. 86% of this land is prime farmland. That in and of itself tells you that this does not comply with the comprehensive plan. I thought it very interesting at the very start of the proceedings, opposing counsel objected and said, oh no, this is part of the Western Kentucky Parkway Industrial Corridor. I invite you to look at their application at page 3, the first paragraph of page 3, and they acknowledge this project is in the natural resources planning area. That's the standard that you go by in this. And in that particular area, this is what the comprehensive plan says, that this is a natural resource area is a low density residential use is recommended density level for the natural resource area. This is not an application for a low density residential area. This is a heavy industry zone. I submit to you it's a heavy industry zone for a project that is not allowed under the comprehensive plan. But that's the first step under the natural resources. The second part of the natural resources, and you've heard a lot about it in different versions, but this is what the plan says. Agricultural land should be preserved and agricultural operations protected and encouraged by the use of various land use techniques, including but not limited to residential clustering, conservation easements, and right to farm regulations. This doesn't say anything about doing an industrial zone at all. And in fact, it goes on to say all development activities should preserve and enhance the rural character of the area. Solar panels does not enhance the rural character of the area. What we're here about is they have to prove under Kentucky statute and under Hardin County law, you get to decide what the application of Hardin County law is here, and it's that you're not going to drop a 443% increase in industrial zone in an agricultural area. It should be not dropped in the low density area, which is close to this area. You've heard all sorts of things about what these people say they will do. I think it is interesting you didn't have one farmer come forward and talk about, well, this is something I want to take place. To the contrary, you heard all the farmers saying they didn't want it to take place. The people that have made presentations to you, albeit about everything other than the zone change, because I kept waiting for them to say this is why it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. In fact, I asked questions to that effect. So they knew straight up when they made this application that this was part of the natural resources planning area. When you look at that requirement on your comprehensive plan, which by the way was amended in 2004, 2008, 2019, and it did not expand as they would have suggested the Western Kentucky Parkway industrial area, nor did it include it, just as your planning and zoning director has told you that. We ask you to turn this down, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Okay, your name, please.
My name is Gregory Dutton. I'm an attorney with Frost Brown Todd, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant.
All right, let your time begin, sir.
First, I want to thank you all for your time and your attention tonight. It's been a long evening, a lot of questions, a lot of answers, a lot of information. I know that you've all paid attention. You've all obviously stayed awake. Some of that can be challenging in these situations, and so I appreciate the attention. I'm going to surprise you right off the bat and say that I agree with some of the things that Mr. Broderick said. Obviously not all of them, but let me agree. The question before you tonight is, does the proposed map amendment comply with the comprehensive plan? I think that the answer is yes. What you've heard tonight is essentially the playbook of political operatives based out of DC. Unfortunately, much of it came out of your neighbors' mouths. The objective tonight was to ask questions, offer many opinions, and provide very little evidence contrary to what we've provided in the application and what we've provided in our presentation this evening. There are questions about karst and whether or not the project can deal with karst. The reality is that we all live in Kentucky. If you live in Kentucky, you deal with karst. You figure out how to work around it, you figure out how to build around it, and you figure out how to deal with it, just like they do in California with earthquakes. Our development plan, if you review it, has an extensive plan on how to deal with karst, how to identify with karst, and if a sinkhole does open up, how to remediate that area, fix the hole, fix the panels, and deal with the situation. That's part of developing in this area of the state. You heard a lot about environmental questions. We have nearly 18 different reports, appendices, and different documents that are in our application that deal with environmental issues. We have studied that extensively. Solar panels and the piles that they use have been studied extensively. In all situations, they have been proven to be safe, reliable, and excellent generators of safe, reliable energy. You've heard a lot of questions about property value, but what you haven't heard is anybody mention what this does to the property value of the landowners. These people have leases with this company that will create value for their families and for the next generation of their values. So when you're thinking about property values, do not forget that these people are your neighbors as well. They own these farms, and they're trying to figure out the best way to maximize the value of that property for their families. There were questions about preserving farmland, and I'll say this, I agree with Mr. Broderick. We're aware that this is a natural resource area. We were aware of that when we cited it here. There's no question about that. The thing about a natural resource area is that number one, there's an overlay on top of it for the Western Kentucky Parkway industrial corridor. Number two, Mr. Broderick even said this himself, one of the goals for the natural resource area is to preserve farmland. Let me tell you, if you build houses there, you're not reserving farmland. If you build a Chick-fil-A there, you're not reserving farmland. If you build a Dollar General there, you're not reserving farmland. This project will actually preserve the farmland. In 40 years, you can pull these piles out, you can pull these panels out, and you can go back to farming this land. Now, we're talking about the map amendment. If you approve the I-2 and say this stays industrial property, and this project doesn't get built, you can still farm on this property. Nothing about the ability to farm on this property is in any way altered by approval of this project. There was some mention about goals in the comprehensive plan, so let me quickly talk about those. Goal 4, be sensitive to environmental conditions. Again, we have many reports that are addressing that. Goal 5, what is the most appropriate use of the property? Not the best, some argue what is the best, but what is the most appropriate? This project is bordered on the west by a railroad, on the east by a quarry, on the north by wetlands that are undevelopable. So essentially 3 sides of this project have already been developed or exist with property that's going to border the project. If you are going to put a solar project in this county, this is the place to put it. Goal 9, promote energy efficiency. Obviously, if this community, and I know there's some disagreement, if this community needs more energy, it should come from this project. The reality is that publicly regulated utilities are exempt from local zoning. If LG&E wants to build a coal plant in your backyard, this group gets to say nothing about it. However, this project, you have developer commitments, you have control over it, you have control over it for the next 40 years. This gives you control over generating electricity in your community, whereas a utility would not be able to be controlled by you. And goal 14, assure the county's resources are developed to best serve the county. Again, this allows energy to be generated in this community over which you control, and it preserves the farmland for this generation and the next. With that, I'll simply say we appreciate the time and we would ask you to approve this project.
Okay. Normally we would close the meeting at this point in time. However, I'm going to ask, this is what we were talking about meeting-wise. There are some questions that were raised that we need to ask Adam, and I need to get some answers. I think the commission asked some questions for Adam as well. When he answers these questions, you may have some rebuttal that you choose, primarily the counsel for each side. In the interest of fairness, it's not fair for us to ask Adam to get a question without you having the opportunity to rebut. So what we're going to do, if it's okay with y'all, if I can have a motion, I don't know that we necessarily need to put a time limit to it, but just ask if Adam has something and they wish to rebut that within a reasonable amount of time that can be done and accomplished, so long as they say Dwayne within the topic itself. Does that work?
I think that's fair, as long as we're giving equal opportunity to either side to express. I think we're following due process.
Okay. Do I have a motion for that? Yes.
Can I ask you clarify?
Absolutely.
When you say rebut, are you talking about offer information?
I'm talking about
ask question.
No, you can.
You can just do that as part of my restatement the application that you could.
The primary question I think that is going to come up has to do with the Western Parkway corridor. And I want Adam to answer that question. You are the one that brought it up. You may have contradictory stuff that you wish to say. I need to allow for that, but it's not fair for me to allow that without Mr. Broderick having the same opportunity to say something. Okay, so what I would like to do, and I don't think there will be many questions, but in the event that you do need to add something that, or you feel that something has been mischaracterized, you need to have that opportunity. Once we close the meeting, you will not have that opportunity. So this is what, if y'all feel comfortable, do you feel, I think that's a fair all the way around. So, Josh, Mr. Cooper, you okay with that? Okay, but basically what we just said.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have a motion? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, a motion for, okay, we got a motion, a second. Okay, now this will require a unanimous vote. All in favor say aye. Okay, so we have a unanimous vote. So, council brought up about your misleading in the Western Kentucky Parkway corridor. When we're talking zone change, this does have something to do with our thinking. So if you would like to address that.
So that's my question. How deep of a dive do you going to just address the industrial?
How deep of a dive do you want me to do, or do you want me to just address the industrial element versus the comprehensive plan?
Yeah.
Short and sweet?
I think that was what the initial.
That's what your question was. Perfect. Okay, so this industrial element of the comprehensive plan, which is on the County Planning Commission's website, was adopted and approved in 2004 as a part of the site we now know as Blue Oval SK. The fiscal court of the time and the planning commission of the time, state law affords planning commissions to come up with many different elements that could constitute a portion of your comprehensive plan. It could be, there are certain pieces that are critical. Land use piece, a transportation piece, a community facilities piece, but you've got many other tools at your disposal that you could add to the comp plan. Historic preservation, floodplain, or in this case, an industrial element. So this industrial element, and again, this predates me, this is from '04, this was developed as part of the Glendale Industrial Megasite, and what it essentially did was, it was an inventory of properties at that time in '04 that were zoned industrial. And so there were several corridors that were identified, this being one of those, the Western Kentucky Parkway Industrial Corridor. Then what you'll see there on that bubble map is it identified which parcels were already zoned industrial. So the Vulcan Quarry, the area outside of the Elizabethtown Industrial Park that was zoned industrial holding. We had a sawmill way out in Eastview, and several other properties. The property contained one paragraph about this corridor. That was adopted and approved in '04 as a part of the comprehensive plan at that time. Unbeknownst to me, until we began to do this staff report, it was not mentioned or referenced in the comprehensive plan resolution that the Planning Commission approved in '08, in 2014, or in 2019. Again, never looked at that until we were in this scenario. And so then we did a deeper dive and said, okay, control find, does the current comp plan mention the word industrial element at all? And it did, but it was only in reference to this overlay zone around the Glendale industrial site, which was the entire purpose of the industrial element to begin with in '04, that it referenced that origination of that map. Does that answer it? So again, and we can get into the staff review of the comprehensive plan and the staff recommendation, but that's a question for the Planning Commission. You know, does the adopted comprehensive plan of '08, '14, and '19 supersede this document from 2004?
Do you have any follow-up questions, Brad? No? Okay, either side wish to question for clarity. Okay.
I guess I do. I mean,
your name, please?
Gregory Dutton, Frost Run Tide, attorney for the project. I guess two things come to mind, and I probably said this about 5 hours ago, so let me just reiterate. Number one, there's nothing in any of these comprehensive plans that specifically repeals these existing industrial elements. Well, I understand that there are updated comprehensive plans. At no point was this specifically repealed. I think part of the evidence that it wasn't intended or specifically repealed is the fact that these are still on the website. My other point is that if Director King didn't know that these were potentially repealed until the last couple of days, which I think is roughly what he's testifying to, I'm not sure how we were supposed to know that. We had many conversations with the community and with the commission over the last couple of years, and we relied on this commission and their staff's professional advice that this corridor, this industrial corridor, was still in effect. We relied on the website that it was still in effect. We relied on the fact that there was no comprehensive plan that specifically repealed this. So I think it puts us at an incredible disadvantage and creates an incredible prejudice to us if this commission finds tonight that this industrial corridor is not a part of the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Mr. Potter.
But to be clear as to the comprehensive plan as amended after 2004, the concept of that area that is a natural resource area was always in the comprehensive plan, correct?
Speak to the comprehensive plan.
I can't speak to the comprehensive plan in 2004, but this area as a natural resource area has been in the comprehensive plan since 2008.
So from 2008 forward, as amended, it got amended in 2008, 2014, 2019, did it not?
Yes, sir.
And consistently, the comprehensive plan excluded this area and had it in the natural resources area, did it not?
I don't know that I'd say it excluded this area, but I would say that it defines this area as a natural resource area.
And thus, it is not consistent with the comprehensive plan based on the staff's review, correct?
Again, I don't know that now's the time for me to answer.
That's not right now.
Well, let me ask you this. From the staff's interpretation of what you knew happened in 2004, it really only applied to Glendale, didn't it?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that Mr. King is on the witness stand here. I mean, I would prefer not cross-examine Mr. King.
Right.
If this continues, then I think that opens the door.
All right, I agree. Okay.
Well, our position is this, that the comprehensive plan was amended specifically. This land was part of the natural resources and excluded to protect it as prime farmland and low-density residential area, and that's why it should be denied tonight, because it is not part and consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. All right, thank you for clearing that. Okay. Any other questions before I close this, and then we can move on to discussion? Okay. I'm going to close this portion of the meeting, which means no further public input can be made. What this does is it allows the question to go to the commission. The commission then will make an action. But before we do that, staff will restate their findings, and then we'll move the question to the commission. So, Mr. King, if you would, please.
Yes, sir. All right, so you all have our staff report there in front of you. Again, in lieu of KRS 100.213, which are the reasons for granting of a map amendment and the county's comprehensive plan and the four-step process built therein, the application before you all this evening from the Buchanan family, the Knight family, and the Wall family, and the applicant Stonefield Solar LLC for the 12 parcels totaling 1,030 acres. The zone change request from R2 and C1 to I2 at 62 and 222 in Elizabethtown, Cecilia, Kentucky. Oh, there we go. Thank you. All right, looking at step one, staff finds that it is in compliance with Development Policy 1, numerous environmental studies such as a stormwater pollution prevention plan, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers jurisdictional determination, archaeological reviews, bat surveys, sandhill crane habitat assessments have been conducted to preserve and protect the natural resource in the area. Development Policy 2, 5 new entrances are proposed and 3 existing entrances. Development Policy 3, Litchfield Road is considered a rural major collector and 222 is considered a rural minor collector. Development Policy 4, public water is available with an 8-inch line on both 222 and 62. Development Policy 5, the 86th Fire Department is located within 3.7 miles and the Stevensburg Fire Department is 5.9 miles from the site. There are 2 fire hydrants located on 62. Development Policy 6, the developer would be responsible for their proposed gin tie line and substation that would connect to the electrical grid. Staff does not find it's in compliance with Step 7 as far as the size and scale of the development in the area. Development Policy 8, again, we are on 2 state highways. Development Policy 9, it would not hinder ongoing ag operations. Development Policy 10, again, both roads are highways and are sufficient and meet minimum standards. Not applicable would be 11, 12, 13, and 14. On to Step 2. Property characteristic number 1 as far as our access roads. They're 2 state highways. Policy number 2, again, already said how far away the fire stations are. Policy number 3, public water is available. Policy number 4, properties are being used adjacent for residential and agricultural activities outside of the adjacent Vulcan rock quarry. Within 1 square mile, there are 9,430 acres, 942 parcels. That equates to an average parcel size of 10 acres. Policy 5, we find in non-compliance since sanitary sewer is not available in this location, and most heavy industrial development does require sewer. Policy 7, the existing natural features, I've already mentioned the numerous environmental studies that have been conducted. Policy 8, the 71 acres of floodplain are being preserved and protected and lie outside of the project. And then Policy 10, non-compliance, that there have been 108 new single-family dwellings built within 1 square mile of the property since 2012. Not applicable here is going to be property characteristics 6 and 9. Step 3, we're looking at the natural resource and the urban area. The natural resource area is noted for having gently rolling to flat land and as having, and I quote, some of the best soils and agricultural land in the community. The comp plan states that ag uses are the most predominant in the area. Low density residential use is the recommended density level. All development activities should preserve and enhance the existing rural character of the area. Ag land should be preserved and agricultural operations protected and encouraged. I need to note that 36.27 acres of the site does lie within the urban area where urban residential and commercial uses are appropriate. Again, no mention of industrial uses. Staff finds that it's not in compliance with Step 3. Step 4, the natural resource planning area, number 21, and the Litchfield Road corridor, number 14. Again, the natural resource planning area reiterates the language used in the future land use area for the natural resource area. I will note, though, that Litchfield Road corridor states that primarily for commercial development. Staff finds that it's not in agreement with Step 4 of the comp plan. I will also mention, though, the industrial element of the comp plan adopted by the Planning Commission in 2004. This site does lie within the Western Kentucky Parkway Industrial Corridor. It's identified on the map, and again, the single paragraph in that element states, in reference to the Western Kentucky Parkway, the presence of this roadway in conjunction with the availability of land primes this location as an industrial area which has the potential for growth. In addition, the current characteristics, the development of the Glendale industrial site might work to increase the industrial development in this area. Staff review and recommendation. The site does comply with steps 1 and 2 of the comprehensive plan. The site is adjacent to the existing Vulcan rock quarry that has been zoned heavy industrial since June of 2017 after a zoning boundary interpretation before the Board of Adjustment. This zoning, this I-2 existing zoning, is in place due to conditional use permits for rock quarry from 1992 and 1994. That is prior to the adoption of zoning in the county in July of 95. The existing I-2 zone is 189.45 acres in size. This 1,030 acre I-2 expansion would increase the zone by 443%. The site is located on 2 state highways with adequate pavement width and dedicated right-of-way suitable for development. It's also adjacent to the Paducah and Louisville Railroad. The site has adequate water lines on both Litchfield Road and West Glendale-Hodgenville Road, and electrical service from Nolan and KU. Within the last 10 years, 108 new single-family site-built, stick-built dwellings have been built within 1 mile of the site, illustrating this as a desirable area of the county for residential land uses. The site is located within the Natural Resource Future Land Use Group, where ag uses are the most predominant in the area, and the area is known to have some of the best soils and agricultural land in the community. The site contains 638.75 acres of prime farmland, 144.09 acres of farmland of statewide importance, with an additional 178.49 acres that are prime farmland if drained or protected from flooding. This accounts for 86% of the site. The site is located within the Natural Resource Planning area, where all development activities should preserve and enhance the existing rural character of the area, and where ag land should be preserved and ag operations protected and encouraged. The Natural Resource Future Land Use Group and planning area state that a low-density residential use is the recommended density level, and industrial activities are not recommended or mentioned. A small portion of the site, 36.27 acres, lie within the urban area and the Litchfield Road corridor, where urban residential and commercial uses are appropriate, but again, industrial uses are not mentioned. The site does lie within the Western Kentucky Parkway Industrial Corridor is identified by the industrial element adopted by the Planning Commission in 2004. The comp plans of 08, 14, and 19 only refer to that industrial element in reference to the interstate and highway overlay zone concept near the Glendale Industrial Site and interchange of I-65. Staff opinion is that the approved comprehensive development guide, first adopted in 08 and then updated in 14 and 19, supersedes the industrial element of 04. Staff recommendation for the zoning map amendment to I-2 be denied because it is not in agreement with the language of the comprehensive plan or in compliance with the 4-step process as outlined in the comprehensive development guide. Staff has prepared 2 resolutions, 2022-008, one for denial and one for approval. Happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. King. I think I speak for the commission. If you all give us just a few minutes to kind of review some things, then we'll open up for discussion. Okay, is there any discussion? Sure.
Mr. Dunn has the exhibits. I need to get those back, but yeah, that is included in the record, and I don't know that it got passed all the way down.
And I would like some clarification on their application as well. On their application, and Mr. Broderick brought this up, and I wrote it down because I wanted to read it myself. It's the application. It looks like this. Okay, if you look at the second page 3, the next to last paragraph, it says the Somerville Solar Project complies with planning area guidelines as part of the Western Kentucky Parkway Industrial Corridor. Although the planning area map denotes this as a natural resource area, that map does not include industrial corridors described in the comprehensive plan's industrial elements, as discussed, blah, blah. So they are referencing the natural resource areas that are in the updated plan, but going back to the 04 plan to grab the Western Kentucky Parkway. Am I reading that correct? You see where we're at, Josh?
And real quick, just to, Mr. Nelson asked for that letter. So I want to be clear, the industrial, the separation between the Elizabethtown Hardin County Industrial Foundation and Hardin County Planning and Development, we don't have a member or a representative on that board. Fiscal Court may, but again, we're not part of the city. We're not part of the Industrial Foundation, and so I had no knowledge of that letter or what property they're looking at or not looking at.
Okay. Mark, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. And I would like, Josh, in one of our comments, we need to keep our comments public. Reference this and explain that to you so that I can understand that they're not pulling from the 04 for one thing to pull from the 08 to 14 for the other thing.
No, but, so you were talking about page 3. That Stoneville Solar Project applies with the planning area guidelines, and this is the IFA. It's part of Western Kentucky Parkway report. Although the planning area map notes this as natural resource, that map does not include the industrial corridors described in comprehensive plans. No, I legally believe that is functionally correct, which that the resource area no map is separate.
Is it what Kentucky
comprehensive plan?
But the industrial element is just referenced when it comes to the Glendales.
That's the only reference to the industrial element in the comprehensive plan is in reference to Glendale Industrial Site in an overlay zone, that the concept originated in that industrial element of 04. So, yeah,
I think legally, I mean, my legal opinion is that there's an 04 that included an industrial element, that even though there's been later adoptions of the comprehensive plan, just by virtue, there's no reference to removing the comprehensive industrial element, and it's still on the website. I don't think you can discount it. I think it's up for the commission to determine how much weight they want to give to the comprehensive plan industrial development.
And the natural resource element has been added since when?
the natural resource, again, that's on the future land use map and the planning area map, the two main maps of the comp plan. And that's been in the comp plan since 08 and 14 and 19.
Was it part of the 04?
I couldn't speak to the 04 comp plan to know. I came here in 08.
Any other discussion?
Yeah. So if this thing is approved and the solar operation was approved, and they've got to put up a bond to protect the landowners for decommissioning decommission of this thing at the end of 30 or 40 years. But how's it guaranteed that bond gets renewed? It's renewable every 5 years.
So again, House Bill 4 that was recently passed addressed bonding for solar facilities. The developers, and we haven't got to this point yet, but they have come up with 36 commitments that they're calling them, that we have in writing, that they would be willing to agree to absent a conditional use permit. So we had brainstormed that those commitments would be essentially conditions of their development plan should the zone change be approved and we move on to that development plan piece. But that also we would record those commitments with their certificate of land use restrictions that gets recorded at the clerk's office. So then essentially it would put any adjoining owner, any realtor, any title company, any appraiser on notice that those commitments were signed by the developer as well as by the planning commission, and they're recorded at the clerk's office. I'm not an attorney, so I don't know the legality of how that hold. But again, we were just trying to brainstorm in absence of a conditional use permit. So we would have that, and then also state law above and beyond us regulates.
That's a renewable bond every 5 years, correct?
We'd have to look at the commitments to see the language.
For decommission.
On the bill.
Right. No, I don't. I thought it was in the paperwork. I thought I saw it in there.
Other questions?
I have one more, but this might, you can correct me, Adam, if this is more related to if it went industrial. In the beginning, I saw some listed as exhibits waiver for neighbors. Can we talk those through, or what are the waivers for neighbors specifically, I guess? Is that related to the project or the zoning?
So essentially those were in, the zoning ordinance, when an industrial activity or an industrial zone adjoins a residential zone, there are screening requirements. Again, typically it's white pines planted 5 foot tall, 10 foot on center. Farmers don't like white pines. So they had multiple adjoining farmers sign waivers stating they didn't want screening. So they went ahead and put the 2 that they had signed on file as an exhibit, that those adjoining farmers did not want white pine screening.
So this was in relation to the zone change, not the project then?
It was in relation to the development plan.
Okay.
So if this was approved as industrial, and say something in the next 8 months went sideways and this whole project went belly up, they could just, then we open a Pandora's box for all types of things being built in here.
Yeah, Steve, so to answer your question again, the zoning ordinance addresses what are permitted, conditional, and accessory uses. You all should have a laminated copy of the land use chart there with you.
Right.
Those activities could occur. Again, they would all require a survey grade development plan. And again, some of them would require a conditional use permit that should the zone change be approved, that conditional use permit hearing would happen before our Hardin County Board of Adjustment.
Yeah, but there's probably 20 things that are listed there that are rights by use, or used by rights.
Used by rights. So you just submit a development plan, and we'd review that development plan administratively, and then again, the applicants could bring it to the planning commission if they disputed the review.
Any further discussion?
Probably an ignorant question, but worth asking. I've seen it in commercial stuff. Is there a way to, since sensitive concern on some of the topics on here. Is there a way to have a condition added where you can exclude these things?
Unfortunately, state law is written in such a way that only Louisville and Lexington are allowed to put binding elements where you could say this zone change is for a one-story bank that's 4,800 square foot. State law doesn't afford us that opportunity to say the zone change is just for Stonefield's solar project and none of the other uses.
Other questions? Anybody wishing to make a motion?
So if approved, yes, against, and we'll discuss.
Yeah, so the second item on the agenda for this evening would be consideration and action on their proposed development plan.
Anybody wishing to make a motion? Well, I will kind of set it off then. How about that? I just want to say that we are never prepared to hear a meeting such as this. All the continuing education we do to do this job doesn't really prepare us for this. We understand that there's passion on each side. If there was a way that we could wave a magic wand and make everybody happy, you could bet we would do that. But unfortunately, we are tasked with a job. And I think the commission has been very consistent over time with doing that job. It has been referenced many times that we heard the last solar, and it was very similar to this in that we had a zone change followed by a conditional use, which is a little bit different than a development plan. That zone was very consistent with what we were looking at. They were wanting to move it into agricultural. That land was currently being farmed, so that was a very easy zone change, and it fit within the comprehensive plan. This one is a little bit more difficult. You made reference to, I've heard, and I've tried to preface this up front by saying this is a zone change. I've tried to really push this is a zone change. Y'all got up and presented, and almost immediately it went to solar. I get that. And everybody's here in this room is passionate about solar. I understand that. This is a zone change. So we just simply have to look at the zone change. When I listen to testimony on both sides, I look at and have to consider KRS 102.213, I think it is. And you have to ask yourself these questions. Is the proposal within the language of the comprehensive plan? Very simple question. The way I look at it right now, it is not. Is it, has something happened within the character to change the character of the land? As I see it right now, it is not. And again, I'm basing it on this comprehensive plan. Is the applied zone appropriate? I think the zone is appropriate. So with that, and just to move the discussion along, I'll make the motion that the zone change be denied. And let me cite some things here real quick so that we can, sorry, my papers are everywhere in the world. Which paper is the Okay, based on the testimony provided here, I make the motion to deny the proposed zoning amendment based upon the testimony provided. I want to adopt staff report and the exhibits entered into record and adopt the resolution 22, 2023, y'all are a year behind, 008 is presented, citing in particular Goal 5, let me see. I find that the proposed amendment is not in agreement with the four-step process as outlined in the comprehensive plan and following goals and objectives. Step 3, land use plan group, natural resource and urban area. Very interested in that one. Step 4, planning area, natural resource area, and Litchfield Road corridor. So we've got a motion. Is there a second? We've got a motion and a second. So we can have discussion now. Anybody wishing to discuss?
Yeah, on the block.
I get it.
On a mile away, isn't it? Anyone who lives here, this letter, especially, equally appreciate the concern for proposals. It's not easy to see.
Any other discussion?
I'll just say I'm hung up on the natural resource part. I can't get away from that.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of denying the proposed zone change or map amendment, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? So we have 3 that have voted to deny, 1 to approve. The map amendment has failed, so there's no reason to continue this meeting. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your time. I know this has been a long night. Hang on, I need to announce something. This is very important. There's a 21-day appeal process. That appeal has to be made within 21 days at the planning office. Once that appeal has been made, the staff has 7 days, I think, to transmit it to fiscal court. So, again, thank you for your time, and please understand and know this was not an easy thing for us. So, have a good evening.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Next agenda item is to go into
Judge,
close.
before we do that, if you don't
Okay,
mind,
sure.
I just want to introduce as Exhibit A to this hearing the list of documents that were in the record at the Planning Commission hearing. And just give those to the clerk to make that a part of the record of this hearing.
Okay.
And that reflects the thumb drive that I gave each of you last week. So.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I move we go to closed session pursuant to KRS 61.810, item 1C, for discussions of proposed or pending litigation against or on behalf of the public agency. Second. There's a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. There's a roll call.
Squire Clem,
Yes.
Squire Hicks,
Yes.
Squire Muse,
Yes.
Squire Pennington,
Yes.
Squire Saltzman,
Yes.
Squire Thompson,
Yes.
Squire Whitehead,
Yes.
Squire Yates,
Yes.
Judge Executive Keith Tall.
Yes. Motion passes. So we are going to close session now. Session is over, obviously. And before we adjourn, our next step is that we will vote on this matter at our next fiscal court meeting, which will be next Tuesday. Okay?
Judge, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second? Any objections? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.